Hi, my name is Elizabeth Cohen. I'm an assistant professor of communication studies at West Virginia University, and I want to welcome you to our fourth session of WVU Comm Mooc. This is the first Mooc that the Department of Communication Studies is running, and as mentioned, this is the fourth installment entitled This is Your Brain. This is Your Brain on Media Multitasking, Understanding and Conquering Technology Overload. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what that means in a second, but before I do, I just want to do a quick plug for the rest of this course. As I mentioned, I'm sort of the last installment. Before we began this, we had three other sessions from taught by other faculty in my department, all sort of connected by the current the underlying theme of understanding how technology influences our social lives. And you can go and access all of those units at wvucommooc.org, and as well as if you're interested in continuing on this course after you hear my little introduction today, I'll be posting all of my slides there. But more importantly, we have discussion boards there in case you're interested in interacting with me or any of the other students. You can also find me on Twitter and Facebook. But if you go here, I actually have some questions at the end of each of my lectures that if you want to, see what other people are saying or hopefully contribute yourself, you can go and find the discussion boards at, again, wvucommooc.org, so please check that out. All right, let me give you a little background myself. I consider myself to be a media psychologist, so what that means is I research and teach the psychology of media effects. In other words, how media, when I say media, I don't necessarily mean news media alone, I mean any type of media. It could be entertainment media, like video games or television dramas, but also technology like cell phones, anything that mediates communication. I'm interested in how that affects our psychology, our social lives, how we use it, what it does for us, how we shape it. So media studies scholar, you could also call me. And this is actually my the first time I'm teaching anything on media multitasking. I confess that most of the things I study simply because they just are of tremendous interest to me. In this case, it's actually of personal relevance. I am a chronic multitasker. It's something that I guess you could say I've been struggling with. It's something that I definitely wanted to know more about myself, and I thought would be very good to share with other people. There's a lot of press about media multitasking, whether it's about Oprah's latest campaign to stop texting and driving, or the latest legislation for texting and driving. A lot of research going on about this now too, and one thing I think that's sort of missing is not just explaining what's happening or what's so bad about it, but having good conversations about, well, what do we need to do then? How do we cope with all the multitasking demands in our life? So that's one thing I really want to accomplish with this class. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I think that a good place to start would be by just answering the question, what do I even mean by multitasking? Well, the truth is, what I mean might not always mean what other people mean, but for the purposes of our class, we're going to be saying that multitasking is engaging in multiple tasks simultaneously to cope with the demands in the environment or to make the most of the time or process of finishing tasks. What I really like about this definition is it's not just talking about, well, what's actually going on with multitasking? Oh, you handle two things at once. It talks about the goals, right? Because we assume that with multitasking, we're doing it for some sort of reason. In this case, to make the most of our time or finish some sort of task. When we talk about media multitasking, right, we're just adding in we're making a little bit more specific and saying that there has to be a medium that's involved with one of the tasks. So it could be a cell phone, computer, TV, iPod. It could be that you're using different media devices at the same time, or it could be that you're trying to do some other sort of task, for instance, driving, while you're also using some form of media, like, for instance, a cell phone, okay? I have some examples here. So this one, I confess, is very perplexing to me. Maybe it's a generational thing. My students confess to doing this one a lot, which is read, in their case sometimes studying, while also listening to music or having headphones on. And I do lots of things with music on. Reading is one thing I haven't really gotten down yet, but this one I do quite a bit. I watch a lot of television. I spend a lot of time online very often. I do those two things at the same time. And a lot of time it's very deliberate. It's not even that they're separate tasks necessarily, but sometimes I'm want to watch television with a computer or maybe my iPhone nearby, so that if I see an actor that looks familiar and I'm trying to like figure out what I've seen him in before, I can IMDb him or something like that. But again, it's still watching and then using another media device at the same time. The example I already brought up, of course, is the use of cell phones during driving. What I like about this particular picture, though, is that it also has a GPS device, which I don't think that people normally think about as sort of like a traditional media multitasking example, but it, you know, it really is. Radio too, to some level. So lots of things, lots of media multitasking could potentially go on in the car. And this one is just hilarious to me. I don't even know if this was a stage photo or not, but texting and bicycle riding, though it does look like she came to a standstill. Yeah, it's as easy as learning to text and ride a bicycle. But again, she's not using two media devices, but we'll still consider it media multitasking because she is doing one task, trying to ride the bicycle, and also using a media device at the same time. A very relevant example was actually as I was putting together the slides for this presentation. There was a lot of multitasking going on. So sometimes it can media multitasking can happen when you're using one device, but other things are going on within, you know, the purview of your screen. So you can see here, I'm putting together this presentation, which you may notice has actually changed a little bit since the screen grab. And right next to it, I've got a little Twitter feed, you know, so I can monitor that at the same time. You also see that I've got, let's see, little Facebook thing up here. Oh, goodness. And even more relevant to my distractible mind, it looks like I had a notification, which I can't believe I didn't get before I even made that screen grab. So, really what I like about this example is like, this isn't just two things going on right now. With all these different windows, I mean, I'm multitasking with lots of different things. My attention could be focused on any number of things going on here. And I will confess, though, that my Achilles heel, besides Facebook notifications, definitely tends to be animal videos online. I could spend all day distracting myself with animal videos online. I used to be embarrassed of that, but I suspect that I'm not alone since I found out that CNN actually has a separate, on their website, on their news website, has a separate non-news section just so people can find distracting videos of animals. They actually aren't as good as I was hoping they were. Otherwise I would have shown you one. Instead, I have another distraction I wanted to share with you. At the time I was making these presentations, this was also a very popular internet meme. This is just to give you an example of how I distract myself. Let me see if I can find the best part. This is a compilation of two goats yelling like humans, and it is outrageous. Check it out. Need some volume. Oh, no. How do I get more volume? Oh, come on. I think the one after this one is my favorite.
What?
No, not this one. Not this one.
What can I do for you?
Okay,
Zapatero, ¿qué opina usted del gobierno de Zapatero? Pues igual que yo. ¿Y qué opina usted? ¿Qué opina usted? ¿Qué opina usted del gobierno canario?
Okay, so you get the idea, right? I mean, literally, I can distract myself in the middle of lectures, which if you ask any of my in-person students, I think they'd tell you the same thing. But this kind of stuff, I mean, is the type of thing that new research is coming out and finding that people are doing all day long while they're working. Again, myself being no exception. So again, today's just supposed to be a very, very brief introduction just to get the wheels turning so you can start thinking about some of these issues. One thing I do want to talk about, since this isn't just about multitasking in general, though we are going to talk very broadly about cognitive processes involved with any type of multitasking, I think that in order to have a conversation about what's going on right now, why even is the media paying so much attention to multitasking? We've always been multitasking. In fact, we've always been media multitasking probably since there's been media, right? It probably wasn't uncommon even 100 years ago to find people who were reading the newspaper and also trying to, juggle conversations at a coffee house, let's say. So why now is it something that we as a culture tend to talk about a lot? My theory is that it does have to do with technology itself. I think that the technologies that we have now, first of all, they're portable often, so we can take them with us. Like we can literally, continue talking on the phone while we run our errands, with all of our errands. And I also think that part of it is, think about this, the example I just gave with the computer earlier, where multiple things were going on there, precisely because it's designed to have like these multiple windows. And so I think that there are certain, I'll use the word affordances. There are certain affordances of technology that encourage multitasking. But I also think that there's something about our culture that, almost encourages multitasking or celebrates it. And for instance, think about, have any of you seen a job requisition that actually doesn't just say, oh, we'd like a multitasker. It actually says multitasking required, as if like this is actually something expected. And how many people have actually complimented somebody for being such a talented multitasker? I do think that we idealize the people around us who are good at multitasking because they seem to be more effective or proficient or something like that. And as further evidence of sort of our cultural support of our multitasking endeavors, the technologies that are coming out now, right, are designed to help us reach our multitasking goals. I think, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So over here we have a picture-in-picture multiple screen viewing example. So, now we have television sets that come with the capabilities to let us watch the news and the football game at the same time, in the same screen, right? This is even different than toggling back and forth between Windows and our computer, of course, because this is literally happening in the same, time stream. Down here, we've got, oh, goodness gracious, Brad's the important part about Brad is still showing here. So we've got this picture of Brad Pitt with a Bluetooth device. I don't think we actually think about the evolution of Bluetooth as being something that was supposed to help us multitask, but think again, right? We used to have to carry our phones, and what did that do? That took up one of our hands. A perfectly good multitasking hand. If we can put the Bluetooth in our ear, then we can do even more tasks. We can walk even, without having. It's just another device. I think that in a way symbolizes our need to be able to do more things, to make our technology help us out with the multitasking. In this third example I have out here, apps for walking and texting, has to be the most absurd thing I've ever seen before. Essentially what it is like, here, you have like your iPhone, and it's hard to walk and text at the same time because when you have a phone in front of your face, right, you can't see through it, so you might run into something. Fear not. There is now an app that you can install that actually makes some sort of like transparent, screen. So I guess it's like using your camera, and then so as you're looking at the screen and texting, there's like a simultaneous feed of the ground or whatever you're like. Maybe it's just right in front of you to help you walk and not run into things while you're texting. Really, the epitome of multitasking, right? P.S. There are hidden screaming sheep videos if you would like some more distraction while you're doing this Prezi at your own pace. Just a little plug, that's not the only one. It's like an Easter egg hunt. Okay, again, just a little bit more sampling of some other things I want to talk about in more depth later. I want to just give you an idea of a couple of the broad theorized effects of this media multitasking culture that we're sort of in the midst of right now. So, for an example, Sherry Turkle has really written a lot about the ways that the different types of technologies we have and their different capabilities is shaping us. And she talks about a notion of like the tethered self, which is essentially talking about our dependency on our devices to sort of maintain a constant connection with other people. It does, of course, on the surface sound like a very good thing, connection. Who wouldn't want to be connected? But one of the implications she sort of gets at is like, well, what does it mean, though, when you are at a dinner table with several other people and everybody is constantly connected to other people through their devices? Are you actually connecting with the people who are right there with you? And those are the types of things that, you know, this when we start thinking about the positive and negative effects of our need to multitask, that's an important issue to start thinking about. Is there are good things such as like the constant connection, for instance, but then what does that do to our other connections? Another idea that sort of come out of this line of thought is the idea that we've turned into a culture that has a continuous partial attention. Okay, so this is Linda Stone coined this idea of we have a fully functional attention, it's just that it's divided, right? We spread it out because there's always something new and shiny, and we just need to keep scanning our environment to make sure that we don't miss anything, right? She calls it an artificial sense of constant crisis, which doesn't sound like it's a very good thing or relaxing thing to sort of always be on, right? But again, the idea of always looking for multitasking opportunities, feeling confident that we can do it, sort of leads to this attention that's not really focused on one thing, but instead distributed across different points of interest. And then very much related to that, Tallis talks about this notion of attenuation. So here, right, continuous partial attention, we also know that there's endless options now, right? So if you're shopping for something online, I mean, this is a very literal example, but if you're shopping something online, there's not just one store. I mean, you could shop until you drop, literally. But the problem is that it leads to commitment options, and he talks about, commitment issues. And he even talks about how this happens in our social lives. So think about the example I have here, where you might have at one point or another found yourself writing an email while you're on the phone with somebody. As if like one of those social interactions wasn't good enough by itself. You couldn't commit to one. You needed to be doing something else at the same time. I will admit that, you know, those perspectives strike me as being, first of all, probably accurate, but also maybe a little bit negative in spin. And the only thing that bothers me about them is that I think we need to have conversations about those, you know, broader cultural implications, and psychological too, but I think it needs to also be tempered with the idea that it's like, okay, well, that's good, but we're still going to keep multitasking. With the media demands aren't going to stop, and so I think it's a little bit more practical to think about what are the ways that we should be dealing with that. Gonna need a little Rubio swig there. Okay. Anyway, so on a more positive note about media multitasking, right? It is something that we need on a biological level as humans. The reason that we can deal with multiple tasks at one time is because I think it kept us safe. It would be if we got so locked and focused that we couldn't attend to different things that needed our attention, then we would be in big trouble. But in this particular media environment, I think it's also important because we're bombarded with a lot more information than we used to be. Part of that endless option thing. And multitasking is the mechanism that we need in order to process all this stuff. I think it's just going to be a question of how we do it. And those are the types of issues I want to talk about later. So really, as I just read it out loud, the purpose of this session is to make students better informed about the consequences of media multitasking so that they can make better informed and more conscious decisions about their media habits. I want to talk about the good and the bad, but more importantly, I want to talk about, okay, well, what do we do with this? What do we do with this situation? What do we do with this culture? What do we do with the demands that are placed on us? I have some learning objectives that are outlined. I'll just sort of summarize them. The first two, I want to give you more or less a crash course in cognitive psych so that you understand what literally is going on in the brain when you're trying to juggle two things at once. And I think understanding, because it is going to be a conversation about the brain's limitations, understanding those limitations will help other consequences of multitasking, objective 3, make a little bit more sense as to why we see different multitasking effects play out in our social lives or in our health or well-being or whatever. And of course, number 4, kind of gave it away, identify cognitive, behavioral, and technological techniques that may be used to improve media multitasking skills and better cope with problems associated with technology multitasking. Again, just going back to that overall objective I have of like, I want this to go somewhere. I want it to be something where we start having more conversations about what we need to do to make the media demands on our lives a more positive experience. And here's just a basic schedule. First of all, okay, so we're almost done with day 1 now. Please, though, if this is at all of interest to you, I would really, really like it if you would go again to wvucommooc.org and introduce yourselves on the discussion board. You can register, you can get an avatar, you don't have to get an avatar, you can get a fake name, you can get a real name, but I want to sort of get some feedback on what other people are thinking about this, because a lot of the research that I had, came from these academic journal articles, and I'm very interested to sort of field for different perspectives on the role that multitasking plays in your lives. Also, don't feel limited by the discussion board. You can see a hashtag right here, WVUCommMooc, hashtag WVUCommMooc. We also have a Facebook page. So please, 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 when you're done watching this, come and introduce yourselves. Then the next lecture that we're going to do is what's the problem with multitasking, a cognitive perspective. Again, this is that boot camp. It's really not a boot camp. Yeah, crash course is better. God, both of those sound harsh, don't they? This is just to give you, again, a foundation in basic cognitive psychology. We won't be talking as much about the media aspects then, but then in day 3, we're going to be talking much more specifically about what's going on when we're using these media devices for accomplishing multitasking objectives. And then again, the climax of this is supposed to be day 4, where we have strategies for coping with cyber overload. And I do want to point out this session was titled that we're going to be talking about conquering cyber overload. And after the website was already developed, I decided that that's probably not the best language. What I really want is for us to just develop coping strategies. We're not going to conquer anything. And I don't even know if we should necessarily. I just want to talk about, successful ways to deal, right? And to feel good about what's going on. And then finally, once all of this is done, once I've presented all the information, once you've gotten involved with all the social media, I'm hoping that we can have some sort of live chat, maybe in multiple streams, certainly on Twitter, if you could meet me there, but we could set it up in other places too if you want to make recommendations on the discussion board. So I really hope to see you there. Okay, so I just want to close with those discussion questions I alluded to. I'd like to, all 4 of these lectures I'll be posting are going to end with their own discussions, sort of food for thought type things, but also a place where we can all get feedback and compare experiences and ideas. The first question is, how do you typically multitask with media or technology? And what are your reasons for multitasking? I think understanding why we do this is particularly important, so I'll be interested to hear that. On the whole, do you consider yourself a good multitasker or a bad multitasker, and why? Maybe I could even add to that if you want to talk about somebody who you know is a good multitasker and what you think makes them good at multitasking, or bad. You could do the bad one too. And number 3, do you think media multitasking is good or bad, or why? And why? So I mentioned before that there's some pretty negative perspectives on the problems with multitasking, but it's also kind of a necessary thing. So where do you fall on that continuum? What really concerns you? Sort of the idea that we're not doing enough multitasking or that we're doing too much, if you want to look at it that way. Anyway, I really look forward to hearing your response. I look forward to engaging with you as this Mooc continues and maybe after that. So thank you very much. I'll see you for the next session.